Um, but meeting called to order at 7:04. We have Eric Chandler, Rich Stein, John Cusano, brand new commissioner, Lisa Wilson Grant, Jim Frere, and David Westmoreland, as well as Patsy Brescia from Lockwood Matthews Mansion. And we can proceed to public participation on the proposed demolition delay.
Sure, and I can give a little overview, and then I believe Rich Stein would like to say some opening words as well,
Yes.
since he was on the subcommittee. So thanks for the people for joining in this meeting tonight. Patsy, I'm sorry we don't have you on the agenda. Was just, I mean, if
That's
you have more,
okay.
yeah, if you have discussion points after, it doesn't appear to be too many people on tonight. But this meeting was scheduled just to have a public comment period on the demolition delay that the subcommittee of this commission put together. We've been deliberating this over some time at the commission's meetings, and we feel that the ordinance is at a place that we could open it up to the public before we really get a solid draft that we could pass over to the ordinance committee of the Common Council. At this point, I guess I'll just pass it over to Mr. Stein to give a little more overview of the draft itself.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Dana. So I want to thank all the members of the public who are here tonight. And to those who have written or will submit written comments, you are here because, like us, believe Norwalk is an incredibly special place, rich with historically and architecturally significant structures. We share a mission to encourage the preservation of Norwalk's history and architectural character. And recently, it's become clear to the Commission that how we work towards that mission needs to be improved, especially as it relates to the demolition delay. A subcommittee was commissioned to start this work, which has led us to this hearing. The demolition delay is perhaps the most effective tool this commission has to fulfill its duties. But without important changes to the ordinance, the demolition delay loses its effectiveness and meaning. The changes proposed in the draft are indicative of a new direction for the demolition delay and the commission, where we can be more intentional with our mandate and strikes a balance between greater accountability and ensuring applications move smoothly. That all being said, this draft is for you, the public, to give your feedback. This public hearing is your opportunity to affect public policy in your community, and your input is critical, and we thank you for your participation tonight. We look forward to your comments. We simply ask that they remain concise and respectful. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Great. So if you'd like to participate tonight, please use the raise your hand feature and we'll bring you over to speak. Just state your name and address for the record, please. Bringing over Ms. Nora Nadilski-Eichner.
Hi. So I am here in my public capacity. I am technically still a council member for, I think, another like 20 days. But my name is Nora Nadilski-Eichner. I'm a resident 7 Outer Road in Norwalk. And I want to start this with, the statement. I have a PhD in art history. So I am certainly someone who cares deeply about history. I am certainly someone who cares deeply about the visual landscape. That said, I also have worked extensively over the last few years on housing affordability. And I feel strongly that our demolition ordinance is not currently serving the best interest of housing affordability in Norwalk. It is applies to all sorts of properties that are never going to be saved, that are structurally unsound, that are, not in the best interest of trying to move rapidly to increase the equality of the housing available, allow our small scale developers to move forward with their projects efficiently, and in essence drives up cost for no real benefit for the city. So I strongly urge the Historical Commission to pare back the ordinance extensively, focus it only on buildings truly of significant historical character. In particular, I object to the sort of look back period. I appreciate that it's being extended a little bit, but I would strongly suggest that rather than a rolling look back, the commission put in a hard date I personally would suggest somewhere probably around 1940. I think that we are all aware that the experimentation with building and materials in the 50s, 60s, 70s led to a lot of interesting and unsuccessful buildings, structural problems with asbestos, other kinds of things that are quite frankly never going to be preservable. But we do then impose this delay on buildings that are never going to be saved. And, I've also, when we did this ordinance a couple of years ago at the council, I strongly recommended then, I will recommend now. I think that the order of operations should essentially be flipped. I think that there should be a historical registry created that identifies buildings that are of such significance that this ordinance would apply. I think that designation should then be put on the deeds so that anyone purchasing the property is immediately aware from the get-go that they have faced this delay and risk. And that would really allow this commission and the city as a whole to focus their energies on trying to save the buildings that actually have some historical character and value to them, rather than this sort of blanket approach that pulls into it many, many things that are never going to have some purchaser step in to save. And again, I would actually ask, and you all will know this, and this is not a question and answer, but I would really strongly to encourage you to look as to whether this ordinance has ever actually been successful in saving a building. And if it hasn't been, then I strongly suggest that it's in fact not working as intended. So for housing affordability reasons, I really urge you again, limit this to the things that are really worth fighting for. Focus the energies on doing so. Don't impose, costs and delays on every housing project in Norwalk, particularly as the buildings that are most likely to be usable for affordable housing are often the buildings that currently in worst repair. They are available for purchase at relatively affordable rates because the building is not salvageable. Imposing this 4-month delay on those buildings is actually really doing exactly the opposite of what the city would like to see happen with improving affordability, reverting those properties to the market, allowing people who, nonprofits, other small developers who might want to build affordable buildings to be able to do so cost effectively. So thank you for your consideration. I really appreciate you sort of revisiting the questions around this ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Anyone else? We have a few other people.
Bringing over Tanner Thompson.
Hi, am I coming through?
Yes.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you very much. After Ms. Najelski-Eichner's comments, I don't know that I have a ton to say because I want to second everything that she said. And I also trust that as an attorney that she's much more familiar with the legal implications than I am. I am not an attorney. However, I support the same goals that she's detailing here, that of addressing housing affordability. I want to point out a couple of quantitative points here. One is that I know for a fact that the existing ordinance, all of its problems aside, has recently been used to delay a housing project that did end up going forward, and that was the one at Cemetery Street, at 1 Cemetery Street, a building that was built in 1968 and had very little historical value, and was used, and the ordinance was used at the very end of the process as a last-ditch effort to try and get the housing project stopped. It was unsuccessful, and I think ultimately led purely to higher costs for the developer, which then are passed on as higher housing costs to the people who are going to be living there. The other point I want to make is that with the proposed look-back period of 70 years, there's still a ton of structures in Norwalk. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would wager to say a decent chunk, maybe even as much as half of the structures in Norwalk are older than that. And as Nora mentioned, that's a lot of structures that are not worth the city's time in protecting for construction reasons, or for the reasons that they're just not particularly historically, they don't have a whole lot of historic merit. I really like the idea of kind of flipping the onus on its head and requiring that buildings be opted in to a registry of some sort. I think that accomplishes the historic preservation goals, but does not near as much get in the way of adding housing, which we so desperately need in today's housing crisis. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And there at least one more person?
Diane Cece.
Diane? You're on air, Cece, Ms. Cece.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Diane Cece, Olmsted Place. And are there just the three of us on speaking tonight?
Yes.
I know you're competing with the bigger event at City Hall, the community listening session, but I certainly hope people will watch this or follow up on this on their own time and contribute to this.
There were a couple of letters too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did someone say something?
Yeah, there were a couple of letters that we received.
Oh, good. Okay.
And also just to add in, we have a written comment period that's going to be open until, I believe, January 22nd.
Oh, good. That's very good to know. Thank you for that.
Yes.
And hi, Lisa, and welcome to the commission there. Hi. So I will, first of all, I want to say I really can't more strongly disagree with both Nora and Tanner. I think there may be some misunderstanding about the intent of the ordinance and how this ordinance works. And I see Mr. Westmoreland shaking his head or nodding. And so I don't know if that's in regards to what I'm saying, but I hope those of you who are, okay, thank you for the thumbs up. You guys that are way smarter than me will speak to that point. So I don't think this needs to be watered down. I just think it needs to be refined in terms of the process of what you look at. No one is suggesting that a parcel that clearly to you folks or to a third party would have no significance. No one would suggest that anyone hold up a property owner or developer in that case. And I think that some of the changes you've made in here actually speak to that point and address some of it. It could be tightened up a little bit more, though. That's not the intent. By the way, I was the person who filed for a review of 1 Cemetery Street and also 2 other East Norwalk parcels, not for the intent of stopping the development, which we would have loved to have seen, but because people had raised to me whether or not anyone would have been aware of anything in the building that would have been of significance. And I have no experience or knowledge in any of this. This is why you folks are there. And this is why people are able to take advantage of it, of the historical commission relevant to the ordinance itself, because either you have the expertise to look right at it and you can stop it cold, as I understand right here, by deeming that there is no significance, or you're now going to have access to a pool of experts and preservationists that can offer their opinion. So anyway, got a little sidetracked there. What I do agree with both of them, though, is, and boy, we've been hammering this home for years. I know Mr. Westmoreland's going to start nodding again. We really need to have an inventory. And we really need to have, something that's other than just the, whatever the historic registries are based on age, and some factor that, gets a designation and a plaque. I know, I don't know if Todd Bryant is on tonight, but I know that the Preservation Trust for a number of years has been trying to get funding and staffing to do this inventory, but I think it's really important. And to Nora's point, I think it would really help in this process because you could pre-identify anything either based on age, use, occupants, architectural style, or the architect. And that could even go not just on the deed, but it could go on the property field card, I would suggest, so that anyone looking at anything to do with the property would see something prominent there that would lead them to take pause. Okay, anyway, so this is my opportunity, I guess, to point out some things in the actual ordinance. I didn't have time to write these up, and I'm glad that the public comment period is going to be held open, but I wanted to just start with a couple of general questions, and I hope you'll afford me the time since there appears to be no one else speaking. But one of the questions, and I think, Michelle, this would be for you. I know this is not back and forth, but maybe you can answer when I'm done. The city is about to implement the spending a gazillion dollars on a new online permitting software package. And I wanted to know if we can assume then that the demo application permit would be a part of that. It's my understanding that all permits, applications, and licenses would be a part of the new system. And so I'd be curious to see then how this would get rolled out, what the interface would be between a property owner and that new software. But anyway, I saw you nod your head, so thank you for that. And then the other thing I want to say is that I still find this, even with all the improvements, I still find this rather confusing as to the sequence of events. And this is where I've kind of been begging, and I still would like to have time to have a volunteer from East Norwalk help you with this, but I think a flow chart would really help. And it would just be like a decision flow chart, like, is it this age or whatever? And no, then it, goes here and gets demolished or whatever. And if it meets the criteria with a yes, it goes to the next step and then trees out again for all of the questions that you have in here would just be yes, no, kind of directionals in the flow chart. And I think that would be much easier for people to understand. I think another thing that's really confusing, and I really was hoping Bill Ireland would be here tonight, but I understand he couldn't be. And hopefully he'll watch this, but even the terminology of pre-demo application is confusing. It lends itself to some other process that's taking place when actually the whole thing is a demolition application. And this review, should it get triggered, is just one more step in that application process. So for mere mortals like me looking at this stuff, wherever I see something that says pre-application, it completely confuses me. And I think that needs to be cleaned up so that it's just part of the application process. And then in this flow chart, it either gets directed over for review or it doesn't. Another thing that I wanted to bring up that would really be more Bill Ireland, but I think that we need to take it into account, it's probably within just his own code enforcement, is some of the things that have happened in the city where things have been demolished that shouldn't have been. Literally, the ones I'm aware of have happened like either under the cover of darkness or like on a Sunday afternoon when there's no one, no one watching. And I think, it may not fall to you folks, but I think at some point there needs to be some guidance on that so that we can prevent that from happening. It may be that part of Bill's code enforcement comes back then for anything that's a demo application. It simply states that you cannot have any demolition activity, after 6 p.m. at night or on Saturdays, Sundays, or holidays. I'm just tossing that out there. In the first paragraph in purpose, down with the sentence where it says it ultimately aims to further the preservation, rehabilitation, and reuse of architecturally significant buildings. I would just add that you add in there, like you have in other places, the word historically as well, because it's not just the architecture. And I want to make sure you keep pointing that out in there. Again, it could be the use, an occupant. George Washington slept there, whatever these types of criteria are. So it could be something other than just architecturally. And in that same paragraph, it also says alternatives to demolition, including attempts to find a purchaser who will retain or remove. I don't know why the word remove is there, but that's always kind of confused me because who's supposed to make that attempt? Are you meaning that you're advising the property owner to see if they can do that, or is it through the commission with some assistance? Just wasn't clear on that. And again, I know you can't answer me, and I'm just going to rattle through my chicken scratches here. Under definition for the word delay, it says beginning on the date a pre-demolition application is being filed. Again, this goes back to very confusing terminology. The thing with pre-demolition application is confusing, and then when it's deemed filed, we don't know when that is. And so we don't know if there's something that automatically triggers that, and you have to get much further into the ordinance to kind of figure out what that is. And it says during which the owner of a significant building or structure shall consider any alternatives. And the point would be there, once it's deemed filed for an application, how would anyone know? So there's still kind of a drop off there of the application itself, and then who does it get to, or how does it get to you to determine if there's any significance to it? In demolish and demolished definition, there you use the word dismembering. I'm not sure what that means, but it's a little scary to me. I don't know why that would be happening. And under a historic property, I just made the note again that a citywide inventory would be something that would be, the city would benefit from some funding to get that done and have it on the field card. Pre-demolition application, I guess, I think that's confusing. It should just be the demolition application, and this is just one step in it. I don't know if you're following along with me. I didn't have it to share my screen, so apologies there. Under subsection 55-5 under pre-demolition, again, that terminology. And under the application itself, under item A2, the name, address, and telephone number of the owners. And I just want to request that would literally be the owners. A lot of times what we see getting published in the hour is the legal format for the notice, but it actually has the contact there, may be the demolition company or the GC or some other entity. Other communities I've noticed literally name the owner, and often they'll name both. So I think when you say owner, it would be literally. And then when you get down to Part B, within 10 days and yada, yada, I started for myself on a piece of scratch paper just to see if I could follow through the timing of how things would work. And this is where it really started to fall apart, because it doesn't really line up with what you're saying would happen here. And I tried to do something where I took a date of November 1st, and I'm bringing this up because I hope maybe the commission can do this at your next working meeting. If you just pick an arbitrary weekday, say November 1st, it would be good if you could follow an example all the way through of how these dates would align. Because then if it's 10 days later, it would be November 11th that a hard copy gets emailed out to the entities, like the abutting neighbors. And then on that same date, again, to the abutters. But then within 14 days of the initial submission, the applicant would file that they verifying that they've done the legal notice and that it complied and they've notified the abutters. The problem with that is twofold. It needs to be cleaned up. And again, this is where I kind of wish Bill was here. I've noticed in the past that there have been examples, I think there was one recently, and I didn't have a chance to point it out, where I'm not sure that all the actual legal abutters were notified, because it's supposed to be the abutting and adjoining and across the street. And so that was one thing there. There's another point I wanted to make on that, but oh, and the other thing is that sometimes these folks will place their ad in the Norwalk Hour, and this happened recently as well, where the legal notice in the classified actually did not comply with the ordinance, and so then it had to come back and it had to be corrected, and it had to be they had to repost it in the Norwalk Hour, and I just wonder how the time clock would work on that. Does it start all over again? Because a lot of the terminology in here is referencing when it's deemed filed. And I guess that would only come from Bill to you once he gives it his blessing. So I think that needs a little bit more clarification. Okay, on subsection 55-6, objection-based review and delay. So this is a little different, I guess, than where something would come over from the building department to you. I guess my understanding is that any demolition application would come over to you folks. Is it that's correct?
That's
maybe
the
that
plan.
can be clarified.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it either triggers something or it doesn't, just, based on what we talked about in the beginning. But if it's an objection-based review, it says in item A, it says if any individual, organization, or entity submits a written objection to the chief building official for the proposed demolition within 21 days of the pre-demolition application being deemed complete. First of all, how would I know if the thing was deemed complete? The only thing I'm ever looking at is, because I'm one of 3 people that actually read the legal notices in the city, so I don't know what would trigger that. And then how would I know? And this goes back to the question where, I was criticized on the ones I filed. How would I know if it has any significance? So, that whole section again to me is very confusing on how that would, in theory it may look good, but in practice I'm not sure how this would actually work. And again, following through on my timeline, if we're looking at business days or calendar days versus business days, in this particular case, this would bring us up to, say, November 22nd in the cycle, because it would have to be within 21 days of this being deemed complete, whatever would trigger that. Or would it actually be December 6th? There were 2 different ways to take a look at how these dates work. And so I think that needs a lot of clarification. And then it gives you, you have to make a decision. In here it says at your next meeting. And so again, it's confusing with these dates because depending on when each of these pieces hit, say your next meeting is the following week, say like 5, calendar days from then. I don't think that makes any sense. And you certainly put an undue burden on your commission to try to address any of it, even though you could stop the clock. Then I think that's confusing. And then under that same section on item B, it says the sole basis for such an objection shall be that the building structure or part thereof proposed to be demolished is architecturally or historically significant. Again, I wouldn't be in a position to know that. I'm filing an objection because I want to know. I either suspect that it is, or it looks like it is, or somebody told me it is. And so this is why it goes back to your folks. And if this comes back to the onus being on a resident or an abutter to have to, say on what basis they're objecting to it, and I think people would take a look at that and just say, I'm not going to bother, just take it down or do what they're going to do. If no such written objection is filed within 21 days, again, to me, that's looking like it would end up under my scenario, then it would bring you out to December 6th. And I don't know how that would, what transpires after that date, but that would be 5 weeks after the actual application came in. Under subsection 55-7, the commission's authority to select consultants and approve the budgets. I know in other departments, and Michelle, you would know this better when there's third-party peer reviews and things. I think there's normally a pool that gets predetermined, normally of 3 or 4 entities or companies, and so people would know in advance who, what that pool of resources are, and then of course if there's any conflict of interest for any of them, they would, kind of recuse themselves from doing a review. But I just wondered if it's going to be a pool and then they would be pre-vetted, I'm sure, for their expertise. And then in fairness, then if there's no conflict of interest, you just rotate through these reviewers. And then under the fee for the third party review, you mentioned in there would be a fee and ordinance with the fee schedule to cover the cost. And so I don't know if that exists now or this would be something new in the 2026 budgeting where there would be a budget. And is it kind of, a la carte, or are these folks on retainer just to be in the pool, and how does that work? And then under subsection 55-118, I'm sorry, guys, I'm trying to hurry through these, but I want to have one bite at the apple, at least tonight. So this is where you get into
You have
penalty.
just one more hand, just so you know, Diane. I just want to make sure we
I'm sorry,
capture that person. We do have another hand up, so I just want to be
Okay, yep,
conscious
yep. I
about-
just got a couple more quick things. So
Oh,
under
just
the
to
violation-
clarify, Diane, it's a little confusing. 55-118 is actually 55-11. It's
Oh,
am I
I
right,
see
Michelle?
55-11
yeah, it's a
violation.
little
Got it.
confusing.
I
Okay.
see that now. Thank you, Dana.
Yeah.
So is that 30? So the total amount of only imposed on a property owner under this chapter shall not exceed the lesser of 30,000 or 10%. Was that 30,000? Is that something from the state statute, or was that an arbitrary number? And if it's arbitrary, I would suggest that should probably be a little heftier, especially given if the basis of it is the property value, the assessed value. I think it needs to be a bigger, at least 50,000 there. But again, that may be tied to some sort of a statute on what you can do, and if that's the case. And then under 55-12, under appeal, any person aggrieved by any order, which could be anyone, the property owner or an abutter or the person who filed an objection or me. It says within 10 days of such order or decision, and that was a little confusing too. Is that from the commission's decision, and then does that get posted legally in an hour? Like how would someone know, or is it just a matter of minutes of a meeting? And if that's the case, I think anyone who is an objector would need to know what agenda this is going to be on of yours, so that they could follow through with that. And then finally, under the report of the chief building official, it mentions that he'd be reporting in to the council and the mayor the number of applications that were objected to. And so, I'd like to see if it's something that's reported, I'd like to see some distinction between things that got triggered, that came over to you from the building department, that triggered a review and or a delay, versus, so I'm just calling them kind of an automatic objection, for lack of a better term, versus objections that came from outside, of the city, from say an abutter or a resident or anyone else. That's it. Thanks for indulging me. I hope some of those things make sense to you. And I saw some of you nodding off, and I'm sorry about that.
No, we're nodding. We're not nodding off.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Ms. Cece. Okay, we have another person to speak. Jack.
Yes,
Pavia.
Jack Pavia.
Hi, yeah. Thank you all so much. I will be brief. I just want to echo what Nora and Tanner have already said, which is that if in practice this ordinance has been used to stop development of necessary housing and other amenities within Norwalk, and not used for the sort of legitimate place of historical preservation because of how many buildings in Norwalk it would encompass. I believe it was a Wells Fargo that was there before at the one cemetery. That would then I would err as a young person in Norwalk on the side of allowing for that housing, allowing for that commercial development, because the more we can have, the more the lower cost that it will be for someone like me. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jack.
And what was your address? I don't think we.
Oh,
heard it.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Address, please.
Yep, 32 Vanderbilt Avenue.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Did we get Mr. I forgot his name. Did we get his address? I don't remember if we did. Oh, Mr. Thompson?
Did we not?
I don't
well,
think we did, but
I know he's active, so I
Yeah.
think that we can find
just
it.
be. by the book.
He used to be on the bike commission.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have it.
Um,
So that's all the public participants that are logged on tonight. As Rich indicated, we're thinking leaving it open to give time for people to digest a little further. I know there's competing events, so we kind of wanted to be lenient with that. So perhaps before your next meeting, 22nd, leave it open for written comment. But that's all I had on your agenda for tonight. However, I know if you guys feel comfortable, you can amend the agenda to discuss what has been mentioned, or we can take all the comments and discuss at your next meeting, whatever you guys decide.
Would like to make a motion for some discussion tonight on these.
I will.
Second.
Okay. Motion is moved. Thanks to Eric's crib sheet.
All in favor?
All in favor, right. Okay. Okay.
I'm opposed. I'm opposed to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
so do we have to be unanimous?
I'll also be
Okay.
opposed to that.
I honestly don't think that this is, I mean, we haven't gotten all the comments. We have more comments
Okay.
coming in.
Right.
And, you know, the call for the meeting didn't say that we're going to have discussion on it. We just can't
Okay.
decide to have discussion on it and give, you know, opinions on what somebody just said. I might have very strong opinions on what somebody said. And I think, you know, we've got to vet those things first.
Yeah.
So Jim, I understand your feelings about not necessarily wanting to discuss this tonight, but item 4 on the agenda for tonight's meeting was discussion, just saying.
Well, but that's some discussion on something other than this. This is just, we called for an opinion that we you know, if we were going to have discussion, you have a give and take perhaps with the people that are talking. It's there might be other people out there that have another opinion of this.
Right.
Okay, so
But
it's unfair that this discussion is not to discuss on the agenda. The discussion doesn't indicate that we're going to discuss the points that just came up, nor are we going to discuss the emails that came through as well.
Yeah.
As it's stated on the agenda, all it says is discussion, so it does not necessarily exclude, preclude, or include anything. Look, you don't want to discuss it tonight. I am fine with not discussing it tonight. I'm just being a little nitpicky about what's on the agenda.
I know.
I just think that there needs to be, somebody needs to explain how the process works today, because clearly there are council people who do not voted against this the first round that have no understanding of how the process works and have completely mischaracterized the existing ordinance and the proposed ordinance. And I think it's appalling. So I think that the public needs to understand, and maybe it's just because the draft is bad, I don't know, but it needs to understand how the process works, because we don't stop, you know, we pass through 99.999% of demo applications. We stop 1 or 2 a year, and we have so for as long as I have been involved. And the Bank of America thing, or whatever that bank building was in East Norwalk, as I recall, even though I wasn't on the commission voted it down within like 30 days and said, this isn't historic. It didn't delay the project for 4 months. It was passed and the project moved on. There was no delay. Saying that this is stopping affordable housing is ridiculous.
So,
I
David,
can't believe that this thing was rejected, that the ordinance committee council members didn't bother to understand how the process works today and what was proposed before they just threw it out. Is just wasting our time.
Right.
So I think the public needs to understand maybe, and I think Diane Cece's idea of a flow chart is a good
I
one
like that. Yeah.
because it would explain to apparently the council people who vote on this how it actually works.
And
Anyway,
maybe
I
when
won't
there's
discuss it since we're not going to discuss it.
and maybe when there's a application filed, the dates are pre-filled, all the dates are populated from the computer or whatever of what all the different points of when they're due.
Without
All these other
discussing
dates
it,
that go off of
without
it.
getting into discussion, I think, and I think we have a lot of changes going on. There's a whole new system, online permitting system that has just been implemented, and that's going to, and it's going to go across all departments within the city. So those permits now that somebody goes into or goes to apply for are now going to be available to everybody else and available to anybody who wants to see the status of a permit or where it stands right now. Whether it's a building permit, whether it's a permit for to secure a baseball field for the evening, or whatever it is. And it'll be able to be shared among departments. So that this whole conversation that we had of when it comes in, the pre demolition, all this other stuff that we have in in the ordinance now may become a moot point because we're going to have a system that's going to be able to identify this stuff rather quickly. Information that we didn't have a month ago. Okay. The field cards, for example, are all going to be automated. The last step of automating or to digitizing those field cards is probably going to be completed within the next month. We just authorized the money to do that. So I think to David's point is that, a lot of the points that we're talking about, a lot of the information that we've got in that ordinance right now might have to be changed because of this new systems that have been implemented or will be implemented in the next month or so. So, maybe it's time to put a pause on this. The other thing too is the tendency is that we make these ordinances, as I was listening to Diane talk tonight, it gets really complicated. And then I think we just looked at an ordinance, a noise ordinance last night at the council meeting and knocked out like half the verbiage in it because it got just so minute, get down to the, if somebody complained about some noise, and you're in your apartment, you complained about noise in the building next door, and the cop comes, he has to come and he's got to measure the sound in your apartment. Okay, when he gets there with the sound device, he's got to measure that in your apartment, and then he's got to go back and get the ambient noise in different places along the way to get to the source of the music or the noise that's going on before he can issue a warning or issue a ticket. So all of that is out the window now. That the cop will go to a building that's very noisy and say, "Hey, turn the noise down. And if you don't turn it down, I'm going to give you, a ticket, and it's going to be $50." And that's the end of it, And people get the message after a while that they get a couple of these, and it's going to be they're going to take care of it. But that's taking all that out of the ordinance and making it very simple, very straightforward. That if you want to demo a building, it's got to have historic value. And you got to, unless you can prove otherwise.
So
that's it.
Here's the problem with the inventory thing. We do have a lot of houses on our local inventory, and we do check that when something that looks like it's historic. That's the first thing we do. It's kept at the library, at Belden Library. Anybody can go see it. But there are over 35,000 buildings in Norwalk, and what we have been doing in the past, which clearly doesn't work, is we get a grant for, I think it's $15,000 or $20,000 from the State Historic Preservation Office, and hire a consultant, and they spend 6 months, and they can review 300 buildings. So it's about 15 years, 20, 30 years, or somebody gives us $4 or $5 million to follow that to get the inventory. The inventory is not that easy. Now, maybe we could do something less than what the state does and with less money and try to get through all 35,000 buildings and at least put something out there. I'm open to that, but otherwise, it's 300 buildings divided by 35,000. Do the math and figure out how long that takes and how much it costs. And I, certainly, I wouldn't even advocate the city spending that much money because I'd rather fix leaking roofs in our historic buildings.
But David, could we go back with the, now that we've digitized all those field cards, can we go back and say, let's take a look at all of those field cards that were prior than 15 years ago, that are over 50 years old, I should say?
Well, how
many does that purge out of the 35,000?
You can flag anything older than 50 years.
Yeah.
And the 50-year date is set by the National Park Service for the Federal Preservation Law. And the rationale is, while everybody right now is dumping on oh gosh, all the architecture and the building constructions from the 50s and 60s and 70s was terrible. Well, you know what? Nobody appreciated mid-century modern 10 years ago. Everybody was tearing stuff down right and left. Stuff people don't, the new stuff that's new then becomes old, and then people realize it's important, and you have to save some of it. That's why it's set at 50 years, and I wouldn't advocate.
Then there's like all Princess Pine houses. I mean, those are all part of one kind of development that was done in that era. And the United Church of Rowayton. I mean, that's architecturally significant. So there are things.
Yeah, but that's, everybody knows that. I mean, that's not finding that one house that it was torn down that nobody seemed to know about.
But there will always be an outlier that might not be something that people know about. There might be something about that land.
No, but my point
that it sits upon that you don't want to.
No, but Lisa, what would happen is that anybody who goes to the building department that files a permit, and what we were talking about, I think early on was, or not early on, but it has come up, is that they're going to make a major renovation, but then all of a sudden that turns into a partial demolition, and that partial demolition becomes a full demolition. But so what would happen if I got any kind of, I'm going to put a new bathroom on my house, and I go to buy a building permit, it's going to flag that house is over 50 years old, and that's going to be watched and carefully. Somebody's going to keep an eye on it. Right. The fact that it can't go beyond a bathroom.
Who's going to do that? That's not going to come to the Historic Commission. Something that's going to do.
It could be flagged. It could be flagged within the building department to come to this committee.
Mm. But that's not an outright demolition. That's a renovation.
No, but what I'm saying is that now there's a 50-year-old house, and if it was a Wells Fargo bank that, because it had marble counters in it, doesn't make it historical or architecturally sound or anything. It was a pretty ugly building, actually.
Right, and the commission, within like 30 days of the demo delay being filed, lifted the demo delay.
Yeah.
Didn't wait 4 months. It didn't send anything. We didn't have any public hearings. I mean, I wasn't even on the commission. You guys were. Saying that stopped housing is just simply not true and not factually correct.
Well, let's face it, part of the issue with the Wells Fargo Bank building had to do not with its historical significance or its marble counters. It had to do with people in the neighborhood being upset about the amount of traffic and parking issues that it was going to add to the neighborhood.
And the
and
commission,
and
the
the site
process
view.
and the ordinance worked. You know,
Right,
the bill was
exactly.
filed and the commission
Yeah.
lifted it.
In
And
fact, you know what,
somehow
I
the
know
ordinance committee of
David,
the council doesn't understand that, which I find appalling. And just, obviously nobody looked or asked any questions on it.
Who didn't, who
we-
didn't understand it?
The ordinance committee of the Common Council, they rejected this draft, and because they assumed that every single building over 50 years old goes through a 4-month delay in a public hearing, which is not true. It's
This-
like 0.00001% of buildings in Norwalk actually go through a delay when somebody goes through the full process. It's hardly anything. One
But
or
there
two
have-
a year,
but there
and
have been
I don't even
these-
think you guys have had one in the last year?
exactly. You know what? I
How's
have
it
been
been
on,
vetted?
this is my 4th term on the commission. My term expires at the end of next year, so I've been around for like 19 years on
Yep.
the commission. And I can tell you that the last building fight we had was about what was going to be the hotel in Sono. And that was dueling experts about, yes, this is significant. No, it's not significant. Before that, the one I remember is the
We have the contributing,
Avenue.
the contributing.
no, over the
There was a
the-
building over by Shore Haven that was,
Right.
there were 2 buildings that were built in 1888 or something. One was in pristine condition. The other one was covered, it may have been in decent condition, but it was covered with aluminum siding or vinyl siding. It was falling apart, it had been added on. And that guy, we held him up for 3 months, I believe. And he was very upset about it. And that's where I think that when we first started talking about changing the ordinance and to I think they had about 180 days in there at one point that they were going to take that time to do it. And I said, 180 days is a long time to tie somebody up, where, and honestly, our commission, kept pushing it from meeting to meeting. We didn't have somebody that could go take a look at it. And that's why I think when Rick got on here, we talked about getting outside contractor that could come in and make an evaluation within a timely period so that we could say, yes, this is historic, or no, it's not, do something about it. So, David, I agree with you that it doesn't happen all the time. Most of the time it works and we dismiss it. But there was this, when I first joined this commission, we did hold somebody up for almost 3-4 months.
But again,
And-
that's an outlier.
Well, but and maybe it was justified. The whole point of the delay, it's all. I feel strongly about putting the 180 days back in, and I won't support this without it. I'll just say that right now, because it's a deterrent. I worked, I got fielded calls from developers for years over all this stuff, and just having a longer delay period, it makes them rethink their plans. And, if you have a 180-day delay, then they'll say, well, maybe it's just easier for me to incorporate rehabilitating the existing building and doing an addition or whatever. And that's the way what we want to happen. Once something gets to the delay in a public hearing, at the end of the day, they can write it out and they can demo the building. It doesn't matter. But it's really a deterrent. And that's what we want the ordinance to be.
The ordinance,
people will try to include historic preservation in their plans.
the ordinance saved a historic building over on Stevens Street by the hospital.
Yep.
We've had developers come in, and we've given them the option of trying to, one of the buildings across the street from Mill Hill, for instance.
Right.
The developer worked with us. We allowed for an expansion of the building and conversion of a carriage house to apartments with underbuilding parking, where they rehabilitated the original structure. They took out the crappy fire escapes. They replaced the building cladding with as close to original materials as they could get. They restored a porch and stairway. And when they converted the carriage house, they kept the nature of the original building when they created the apartments. We also allowed them to extend the rear of the main house uh, and enlarge it towards the back where it couldn't be seen from the street, where the public wouldn't see that the building had been enlarged. But again, the work that was done was in keeping with the original structure. And we have worked with that developer on multiple projects. We've worked with other developers that we've been able to talk into working with us to save visually historically significant buildings and still increase housing in the community. And as far as stopping development, I'm sorry, are there no buildings on West Avenue going up with apartments? I mean, are we really?
I think we're getting, you're now starting to pick on some of the things that came up in the public hearing. And I don't think that was the discussion we were having. I think we're on kind of, let's go back to what David was saying, is that I think it's important that, we really understand what the process is. And as I mentioned, the process is changing, which may make what we have tried to put in, and I don't argue the days that you're talking about, David, but we ought to find out what the procedure is going to be over the next going forward over the next couple of months, the implementation of these new systems.
So the person that's putting together new systems has all this information, all these dates, if this, then that,
but that may be immaterial. That these dates that we keep talking about in the ordinance, it may be automatic that this stuff will come instantaneously to all affected departments, and we can put a flag in there that says if a building is over 50 years old and somebody's going to take out a building permit, that somebody on the historical commission should at least take a look at it or know about it or get a report that comes every month that says, okay, this is what it is. Okay,
I agree.
It's over and above whether it's a demolition permit.
Well, yeah, there's kind of automation to the permitting process. I mean, that certainly can impact timelines, the dates, and all that sort of stuff. So I'd be very curious to see how that works, because that might strengthen the ordinance, right?
Yeah.
I
mean, this is something new that we didn't know about when we first started putting the ordinance together.
I did have a question about the fines, though, that was raised. Is that something that's per the state, or is that something that we just had in there before and it's
right,
$30,000?
No, that's newish.
Where'd that come from?
That was in the original ordinance.
Was it?
I don't think that's changed in draft.
I think it was black. Yeah, I think it was in the original ordinance. But is that something that matches what the state? Does the state have amounts of fines?
I can check the ordinance, and
we should check the ordinance.
or I can check the state statute that allows for this ordinance to see if there's fee limitations.
The state enabling ordinance allows us 180 days as well, and that's why.
Is that a fee or a fine?
5511. That's where it was.
Yeah, because ironically, well, Jim mentioned
the total amount of all fees imposed on a property owner under this chapter shall not exceed the lesser of 30,000 or 10% of the assessed value of each such building.
But the definition of a fee is going to be definition of the fine. The fine is indicative of some kind of violation.
Yeah.
Compared to a fee, which is the cost of doing the business, right?
Right. Yep.
So yeah, for example, I don't remember Willow Street, our oldest house.
Mm-hmm.
Those people applied for a second story renovation,
Mm-hmm.
and then on a Saturday, they pretty much demolished half the house. Now, I don't know if they ever
It
received a
wasn't just
fine.
Saturday. They planted
Yeah.
arborvitae all around the perimeter to screen what they were doing, and they were there with an excavator crashing it was not a light renovation of the second
Yeah,
floor.
aside from that, whether they intend to do that, I don't know whether they were fined for this, what turned out to be, it had to be demolished. At that point, they ruined the house, but I don't know whether those people were fined for that act.
That's a good question. Michelle, could you find out from Bill Ireland?
Yeah, I think I wanted to speak to you guys about next steps because I know we've kind of touched on a lot of parts that are going to be going around. So if you guys agree, I can compile all the comments, written and verbal, and do a cover sheet and just kind of make it organized so you guys can discuss it in full at your next meeting. If it makes sense and we have the time to, invite Bill Ireland to come speak about his process. And I think that will be a good like educational piece to it, but I don't know if that makes sense to do in the same night at the regular meeting. And then maybe put a flow chart together.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, is I think prudent is once that we do finalize this process is hosting some kind of community thing where we can talk to the public who are interested about it and clearly lay out the process for them, give them some materials, because I think there's going to be a huge educational component post demolition ordinance revise that is going to be critical here.
Well, and I think we need to have a joint meeting with the ordinance committee so that we can educate them because they clearly didn't read the ordinance or understand the ordinance. So that just can't happen again. So we need to have a joint meeting with all of us and them because it's just unacceptable.
I have an additional question about how this process moves forward from what you explained, Michelle. Is there a final draft that once we're all agreed, what happens to that? Does that go to council members? Like, what's the process?
Yeah, so once you guys have a draft that you all agree on, you'll vote on it, and then we'll bring it over to the ordinance committee. The ordinance committee will vote on it and bring it over to the full council for vote to get approved. But I could look into, based on what David just indicated, maybe even having like a preemptive meeting with the ordinance committee to go over it. I can see if that's possible. I know that committee is going to be all shuffled around, perhaps. We'll see. I'm not sure with the new council in January.
It sounds smart to talk to them before we just publish something. So
You can get on their you can give them a report on the status of the ordinance, and you can just be on their agenda and then go and present it to them.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to go whenever you do that.
I have sort of a rhetorical question. How much of the new buildings going up on Cemetery Street have, I want to say equitable housing, that's a new term I can learn from John, versus affordable? How much of that is, how many apartments are there and how many of them can be afforded to be lived there by average Norwalkers? So that's just, I don't think any of us has that answer right now, but
I think there's about 80 some odd units in there. And usually it's at least 10% will probably be affordable, which means that it'd be 70% of whatever the
yeah, I think it's 77 units.
Yeah.
And they have to do 10% affordable housing. So
7 units.
They're probably doing 7 units and then paying out the fractional.
Yeah, they wouldn't round up, would they?
no,
They never do.
Of course not. Yeah. Yeah.
Be careful though how we talk about affordable housing. Just want to put that out there. Our purview is not that.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It is, but we all sort of are kind of and we have gotten a little bit closer to what the rest of the city's doing, but we do have to have some sort of thought about that, I think.
Well, apparently we're holding affordable housing up.
Yeah.
By all the historic preservation and all the demolition delay hearings we're doing, and 120-day delays we're imposing, and slowing down every project and keeping affordable housing from being built. Just ridiculous and offensive. It really just offends
me.
me.
Focusing on our work and not concerning ourselves with housing development and affordability and all that sort of things. Our work is to focus on historic preservation, and obviously there are things that blend into that, but I would just be very careful about towing that line.
Well, I don't believe any of that. I was saying that rhetorically, clearly.
No, understood. I'm just saying generally, we're still being recorded. This meeting is still public, so
I'm glad.
I think, David, are you suffering from a cold today?
A little bit.
Okay. Okay, so when is our next meeting? I should have looked at the
20.
So I received projected meetings for 2026, but I don't know if those are like solid, like confirmed. I put everything in my calendar, but I never got a note that said they were confirmed.
Oh,
I think we have to make. Don't we have to make a motion to approve the dates of all of the?
Probably.
Yeah.
All of
You did that at your last meeting,
Oh, okay.
so they're official.
Okay. Thank you.
Are
That's
we
helpful.
meeting? Are we meeting again this month, or are we done?
You're done for the year. Your next meeting is January 28th, I believe.
Okay.
And do
So
we
I
have a
think
deadline?
this will be my last meeting then, because I'm not. My term is up.
Say it ain't so, Jim.
Oh man.
It is so.
Actually, I've enjoyed working with you. So
Thank you. I wanted to just say that I've really learned a lot from this group, and have a whole new appreciation for the work that has to be done. And I hope and I'm happy to see some new members on the board. I'm happy to see David come back.
Maybe not.
he's-
I'm in a bad mood
David,
after
I'd just
20
like to say,
something
I'd just like to say it's a lot easier now that I can feel relieved and leave this body.
Well, we're going to miss you. I think it should be that you should find somebody else to replace you if you want to leave.
Well,
I think we probably
that's
have more
usually how it
openings.
works.
He could be appointed as a commissioner.
Oh, that's true.
you could reapply, Jim.
Well, I'll see if I get on the waiting list.
Yeah.
Mine always rolls
Oh.
over.
Yeah, waiting list. That's funny because there's 5 vacancies,
Well,
and I guess
wait,
you're sort of
it's
5 and a
1, 2,
half.
3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, no, it can't be 5 vacancies.
Yeah.
And how many people on the committee?
You
or on
can't
the
leave.
commission?
You can't leave. See what you're
Well, I mean,
doing
I
to
guess
us?
they'll send us somebody new, but
What do you mean that we'll send? They'll send somebody.
that was
new?
that was a new
Always-
idea.
well, that's what they did to Tom. They just booted him out, and then you showed up. No,
We still have to count Mark and Liz.
yeah.
I think.
Although Liz is only till the end of the month, so
Yeah,
that's-
Liz is off.
Liz is out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, well, Lauren, your daughter, she wakes me up every morning, but she can't. She's expat, so
Yeah, I know. And sometimes I wake up in the morning. I say, "Yeah, that sounds like a familiar voice." I don't know what it is.
the same
Oh,
thing
yeah.
happens to me. It's like, what? Where am I? What?
So is it up to us as members of the commission to find new people?
Doesn't hurt.
You can encourage people to send their resume to the mayor.
Okay.
If you know of people who are interested in history and might be a good fit for this, by all means,
Yeah.
you know,
Especially if they're
let
architects
them
and
know to
historians.
send in their application.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Barbara wants to do is get together a pool of people that we'd always have lists of people that would be interested in. So, every time we go around to a meeting or we're talking to the public, make that available. And when I was campaigning, as a matter of fact, there's a number of people that when I banged on their door and they said, yeah, they would like to get involved in the city. That's how we got Mr. Stein over here. I banged on his door 2 years ago and he wouldn't go away.
And
Actually,
he'll be
it was-
eternally grateful.
Actually, I didn't even speak to him. It was his wife, I think we
Yeah.
spoke to at the time.
That's true.
She's
And
fine.
she
Well,
got-
I think Tom
went home and
Livingston
she
may have
nagged
time on his hands.
yeah, that's been suggested to me.
Yeah, by me
But-
yesterday.
But anyway, it's been very enjoyable. And
Well-
I really am happy that David's back too.
Yep, we all
This
I
are.
keep telling him, and every time I see him, I tell him, I say, boy, am I glad you're back.
Demo delay is my least favorite subject of all of this things we do.
Well, again,
Because
it's done.
Everybody is so misinformed about it. They make stuff up, and it's frustrating. And I've been doing it for 20 years now, and it's just like
And you still
people
haven't
don't
gotten it
bother
right.
to find out the truth and the facts.
Nowhere
And
to
it-
go
you know,
Just
from
sounds like
here
the rest
to
of
that
life.
topic.
I always advocate, 9 times out of 1,000 times out of 1,001 times, I'm usually like, I look at the demo application, I look up the property, and I'm like, I call Bill Ireland, I'm like, I'll come over there with a sledgehammer if we can tear it down now. I'm usually wanting to get it done because most of the stuff it could be
Right,
redeveloped.
right.
Absolutely.
You're right.
And we do not impede that process in any way, and the ordinance doesn't impede the process. We just need to clarify clearly how it works, because
We
clearly
just have to be,
people have mischaracterized the way.
And nor are we responsible when a third party from the public decides they want to impede something and come in and file a demo delay.
Right.
Right.
It's our
request.
duty to look
But
at that, recognize it, and lift it and move it on. And that's
know.
what we have done for the last 20 something years that I know of. So we've never, ever intentionally delayed something.
No, I agree with you. And since I've been on the commission, I don't think we've delayed, other than that one house over by Shorehaven, did we, I've never seen anything being delayed that should not have been delayed. And I'm also amazed at the number of, like you said, that there's an awful lot that there's no doubt in my mind that they should be torn down because otherwise they're going to fall down pretty soon. Although there is one house in Rowayton that was only about 7 or 8 years old that, no, maybe 10, 15 years old that they decided to tear down on Indian Spring Road.
It's usually a good thing because generally people tear down a house and the property's worth $600,000 or $700,000, $800,000, and then they spend a couple $1 million building something and they pay more property taxes. And I am all for that, as long as it's not a historic house that matters.
I agree.
Anything else on our agenda tonight, Dana?
I think we could bring up that part of your number 5, your favorite part.
Before, could I just ask?
Wait,
Can we
Michelle,
Sorry.
something.
Approve
your
the holidays,
next-
the schedule.
For your next meeting, what would you like? What are you thinking for the agenda items? Where are we with this ordinance? Do we want Bill Ireland? Are we doing your typical agenda?
I thought you were going to ask if we wanted cake.
Sorry, I need logistics.
Virtual cake.
Kate. Oh, I think, yes, we're going to have our normal people speak, as opposed to Eric. And, sorry, Eric.
That's okay. I've never been normal in my life.
Historical Commission. And then, yes, we do it would be good if we could have Bill Ireland to help
Okay.
us through
It-
this problem.
Michelle, could you take a stab at doing a flow chart of the thing? I mean, that may show us some glaring holes in the process, and it also may get us talking about how to make the process really clear so that people aren't misinformed.
Sure.
And also, I'm going to thank you in
Diane's-
advance for undertaking the Herculean task of transcribing all those notes from tonight.
Michelle, does the city use a flow chart in any of its other ordinances as a graphic to take people through a process?
Not our department, but I know the state loves flow charts for a lot of its coastal stuff. Their coastal site plan reviews and coastal resources stuff. They have like a ton of flow charts for that stuff. But from a planning and zoning standpoint, we don't have anything, I don't believe.
But hopefully you'd be able to build off of something that at least gives us a template that
Sure.
makes some sense.
Diane Cece gave us a flow chart.
Yeah, I think she came up with something just
Yeah.
high level.
Oh, cool.
So I'll play around with it and present it to you guys next time.
So we'll have that prior to our next meeting.
Sure. Yeah, I'll put all the materials in the online agenda packet. If anybody needs hard copies of anything, just let me know and I can provide it.
Thanks. That's great.
Okay, then. Well, let me just say this, Jim, your absence will be felt. You have been a steady hand and a calming hand, and helped us put the brakes on some conversations over the course of your term with us. And for everybody, no matter what flavor of holidays you celebrate, enjoy them all. Have a happy new year. And I look forward to seeing those of you next year that I will see next year. And with that, I move to adjourn.
Jim's second.
Second.
All in favor?
I just
Aye.
Was someone going to say something?
Yep.
wanted to say to Jim Frere, I hope it's not something I've said that's causing him to leave. So,
Let's just put it this way, I'm never going to talk to you again.
Oh, one and done.
No,
All
I hope I do. Okay, good night,
Have a good
everybody.
night.
All right,
everybody.
thank you.
Happy holidays.
everybody. Bye-bye.